Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. Today is the Women's Paris-Roubaix edition 2022. Now, hopefully you guys all remember the marvelous edition that we all got to watch in October of last year for the first edition of the Women's Paris-Roubaix. It was wet, it was cold, it was fantastic viewing from the couch. Today, the women are going to experience the complete opposite effect here at Paris-Roubaix with dry and dusty conditions. Now, we got some bad news when I'm sitting on the couch and the camera comes on because Jumbo-Visma's Marianne Vos is out with COVID. Yesterday, Jumbo-Visma greeted us all with great news with Wout van Aert starting Sunday's race after a bout with COVID. And now today, this morning, Marianne Vos is out. That's going to leave a big hole here at Paris-Roubaix because before the race start, I really see Trek-Segafredo, SD Worx, and Jumbo-Visma as the three dominant teams. The problem with Jumbo-Visma's with the women's team, though, much like the men's team, they have one really dominant rider, Wout van Aert being on the men's side, and of course Marianne Vos on the women's side. So when you lose that number one so dominant rider as Marianne Vos, you know the team's going to be a little bit lost. But today is Paris-Roubaix, so we know there's a whole lot of reason to sit on the couch and tune in because it's going to be an exciting race. Now, I want to highlight throughout today's stage what's happening to Trek-Segafredo and what's happening to SD Worx because they are the two biggest teams here starting Paris-Roubaix. Now, of course, with SD Worx, we know Lottie Kopecky there, the Belgian rider. She's the big favorite, and we know she's capable of going to the finish and winning big races. Now, when we look at her teammate, Chantal Blaak, my number 2 favorite before the race started, and when Marianne Vos leaves, that means Chantal Blaak moves up to my first favorite here of winning Paris-Roubaix. Those two combinations of Kopecky and Chantal Blaak add a lot of force to SD Worx, and they got a lot of support back there of quality riders. Now, when we go over to Trek-Segafredo, remember last year I already told you guys Lizzie Deignan won, but she's out. She's trying to increase the size of her family, so she's taken the whole season off. But they still have depth in Trek-Segafredo and big numbers there. They're led by the current road world champion, Elisa Balsamo. Along with Elisa Balsamo is Elisa Longo Borghini. Both girls, big-time players here at the World Tour stage when we're talking about racing over in Europe. And along with them, they still have more talent back there with Ellen van Dijk, who's the current European road race champion. And then along with Ellen van Dijk is going to be Audrey Cordon and Lucinda Brandt. That is 5 big hitters. Now, they only have 6 on the team, and Chloe Hoskins, she's no slouch herself. So 6 quality riders. When you're watching the women's field, though, you have to remember, with only 6 riders, the tactics are a bit different than the men's field. So when we start watching some of the tactics play here at today's race, you got to remember when it comes to the breakaway, when you look at the men's race and its 250 plus kilometer stage, that when breaks get away, you can give them 5 minutes, 6 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes to the men's. The women's field, because there's less big quality teams back there, and because the number of riders on each team, they don't ever allow the breakaway to get that much time. And that's why in the women's races we see so much shuffling going around with the breakaway going off early, then getting caught, and then mid-stage another break going, getting caught, and all the way into the final of the race normally, with the breakaways normally not ever gaining more than 1-2 minutes on the lead peloton behind. Now, when the racing starts, let's get into it because it's a big race and there's a lot to dissect. With 82 kilometers to go, when the TV comes on, we're on Sector 17. That means we have almost 30 kilometers worth of cobblestones left, and there's only 85 kilometers left in the race. Now, when the cameras come on, there's a break of 5 up there, and I'm not going to bring them up because they're going to get caught right away. I will bring up that it's Trek-Segafredo on the front, and it's Ellen van Dijk, and she's leading out the Trek squad into the first major cobblestone section here at Paris-Roubaix. She's driving on the front. Everything looks perfect for Trek-Segafredo. And then 1-2 kilometer sections later, it's Ellen van Dijk who gets a flat tire. And shortly, just before, just after, I can't remember at this moment, her teammate crashed and went off to the left, Chloe Hoskins. So right then at that moment, When you look at Trek-Segafredo, remember, they were first and third last year with Longo Borghini being third here at Paris-Roubaix, and of course her teammate Dagnan being first. Now you look, they're controlling here at Paris-Roubaix when the cameras come on, and because they're controlling, because Ellen Van Dijk is driving it so hard up there at the front, there's chaos in the back. Chaos back there means your car is nowhere close by. Chaos means the field is completely disintegrated, blown up, and your car could be minutes behind the group. So when Ellen Van Dijk gets a flat, when her teammate Chloe Haskin crashes, that means now not only are the cars separated, but now you have to have the car service both riders, one who crashed and one who flats. So you know it's a complicated moment, extremely complicated moment right here for the DS driving the car back there for Trek-Segafredo. With 60 kilometers to go, it's SD Worx, Chantal Black on the front pulling hard. Now this is a great tactic because they know Trek-Segafredo back there is having some problems with two big riders off the back. So they're setting some tempo on the front. It'll set them up for the cobblestone sections with Chantal riding the front and hopefully keep their team safe going through these next sections with only 60 kilometers to go, and make it difficult for Ellen Van Dijk, who's back there chasing hard to try to get back up and help her teammates throughout the final here at Paris-Roubaix. Ellen Van Dijk will get back on after 15 kilometers of chasing. Now with 53 kilometers to go, we're going to see a big attacks by SD Worx Lottie Kopecky. Now, Lottie Kopecky is a big-time favorite to win here at Paris-Roubaix, so you know when she attacks, we're going to have to see other teams following it right away, and it's going to be UAE Bastianelli on there trying to hold her wheel behind. With a bit of a gap is Lucinda Brand back there, Trek-Segafredo. Luckily for her, when we go into the next left turn on the cobbles, it's Kopecky that goes off the cobbles and into the grass. That'll slow her down just a bit and allow Lucinda Brand to close the gap as she goes through the left turn perfectly. Now with three up front, things get exciting in the peloton behind because it's Trek-Segafredo road world champion Balsamo who gets a flat tire with just after 3 kilometers from the attack of Kopecky. Now we got 50 kilometers to go. There's more the limit here for Trek-Segafredo Director Sportive Ina Teutenberg. What is she going to do and what calls will she make on the road? It's the road world champion back there isolated. She has 3 riders in the front group of the peloton and Lucinda Brand up the road. And remember, like I just got done discussing, you had Ellen Van Dijk who had flatted earlier, just got back on before the flat of Balsamo, and you had Chloe Haskin who crashed off to the left into the grass. So there's been a lot of stuff going on for Ina Teutenberg right now. She has to make decisions fast. Now she's going to leave the road world champion isolated and on her own to find ways to get back up to the peloton. And up front, leave in the peloton Longo Borghini with 2 helpers in the form of Ellen Van Dijk and Cordon Ragu. Now this is an important call because remember, when you're Trek-Segafredo, when we're talking about Longo Borghini, she was podium here last year, 3rd at Paris-Roubaix. If you drop riders back for the road world champion, that means the podium from last year's Longo Borghini is going to have one less teammate up there, and it's not a given that you can get Balsamo back up with the help of Ellen Van Dijk. So when we get further into the race and we go back up to the front 3, at first Lucinda Brand was not working. I agreed with the tactic. And then she started rotating through with the with the SD Worx rider and with the UAE rider of Bastianelli. That was a surprise to me. I didn't see it coming. When I went and spoke with my wife, who used to be an ex-pro racer, she told me at this point in time, for sure, Ina Teutenberg would have her just rotate through and if needed be, have her sit on later, which would kill that move. I would have liked to see Lucinda Brand sit on that group of 3 right away and kill it. My wife tells me if that group was killed and brought back, what would happen? The speed of the peloton would start to accelerate from all the attacks coming, and then the road world champion would have no chance of getting back on, which I believe she's right. Whenever I've watched the women races, whenever the speed's at its max, at its hardest, is always when there's no breakaway and attacks are flying left and right, versus when you just let a small break stay up the front that's at 15 or 20 seconds up the road. At that point in time, remember, Trek-Segafredo could always have Lucinda Brown sit on and kill that break with still 40, 30, 20 kilometers to go even. So, at this point in time, when I'm sitting on the couch, I don't know if I agree with the tactic, but that's the tactic that Ina Teutenberg is going to take at today's Paris-Roubaix. Now behind, as Balsamo is chasing back on, we're going to see her hit a hard pothole. It's going to kick up her back wheel and send her front wheel sliding sideways. The Trek-Segafredo rider, world road champion, pulls it out to our amazement sitting on the couch. And then up in front of that in the Peloton is going to be Longo Borghini, who swings to the left and has to bunny hop the curb there in order to avoid crashing on her own. So the dilemma here already, since the camera has turned on from 82 kilometers all the way to just under 50 kilometers to go, has been immense for Trek-Segafredo. And you know the director sportif back there has all kinds of action happening in the car. Now up front, those three riders will finally get caught. Just after that, we see an interview with Kopecky up on the screen. And while she's talking about how much she loves Paris-Roubaix, we're going to see that the road world champion Balsamo is disqualified from this year's edition of Paris-Roubaix. Now I'm sitting on the couch in astonishment going, is she really disqualified? Nobody's even bringing it up yet. Maybe this didn't happen. But yes, it did happen. They catch it about 1.5 kilometers later and talk about how she was holding a sticky bottle from her director's car there with Trek-Segafredo's Ina Teutenberg. Now, at this moment, when I'm watching it from the couch, if you look at the moment, and I'll show you guys the picture, it's a group of riders right in front of her, and when you see it and you see her grab the bottle, that group is still in front of Trek-Segafredo car. At this point in time, I counted it sitting on the couch. It was 6 seconds that she was holding on to the car. But if you look at the position that she gained, she actually did not move any kind of position because they never passed that group right in front. Is it a sticky bottle? Absolutely. We all do sticky bottles. But there was never at any point in time a sticky bottle that advanced her position to try to bring her up closer to the back of the peloton there and help her get back on after a flat tire. Now, it took until after the race for me to go back and see other portions of how she got back to the group there. And I'll show you one other picture where the road world champion is following behind one of the team cars on the bumper. So I don't agree with the sticky bottle. I'm not even certain if I agree with being on the bumper at this point in time either, because of course I've been there and done that. So I don't like the call, but they disqualify the road world champion, and that leaves Trek-Segafredo with one less rider up front. Now with 34 kilometers to go, as the three riders up front are getting brought back, it was Movistar and UAE Team Emirates I saw on the front trying to bring back the three riders. And just as they get brought back with just over 30 kilometers to go, it's Longo Borghini, Trek-Segafredo rider, who throws in a massive attack. We see in the picture Elena Cecchini from SD Worx, along with the Movistar rider Emma Norsgaard. Now those two can't hold the wheel. Longo Borghini is flying up there and they open the gap. At this point in time, the SD Worx rider Cecchini, she makes a wise decision when she realizes she can't close the gap. We'll see Norsgaard look back at her, and they know at that point in time that the SD Worx rider is no longer going to pull. They'll sit up and go back to the peloton. This, in my mind, is a good decision because remember, in the field behind, she still has Kopecky back there and Chantal Black, who are big favorites here at Paris-Roubaix. With 28 kilometers to go, it's SD Worx on the front. They got to bring the gap back down on the lone rider, Trek-Segafredo Longo Borghini. When they enter the Section 7 cobblestones, the gap is getting narrow, and there's two SD Worx rider on the front, Chantal Black and Kopecky. They're drilling it 100% on the front. When Kopecky pulls off, though, she does a big no-though. She goes off to the right. Chantal Black punches the gas, and it splits the peloton in two. We don't know this when we're watching it on the TV screen. I had to go back after the race and find out exactly what happened to Kopecky. And when you look at the pictures, you can see her in the second group. Now, in that same picture is the lone rider, Longo Borghini, up the road, while it's Chantal Black sprinting on the front of the first Peloton group, and Kopecky lost in the second group. With Chantal sprinting up there, she's almost got the gap closed as they go up the small rise, almost catching the solo rider up there, Longo Borghini. As they go into the left turn, Chantal Black looks like she can close the gap when she realizes she doesn't have Kopecky with her. We'll see her take a look over her shoulder, realize that Kopecky's not there, and she'll come off the gas. Now it's FDJ that continues on the gas, and this causes dilemmas back there for SD Worx because it doesn't allow the two groups to come back together. And as we see, it's the front rider up there, Longo Borghini, and she's throwing out every risk imaginable on the pedals through all the corners, trying to save time on everybody at any inch of real estate that she has here at Paris-Roubaix. Behind, what's happening? It's about a group of 8. Nobody wants to work with the SD Worx rider Chantal Black, but it's not going slow enough for the two groups to come back together. When you look in this group, they have multiple different riders in there with 2 FDJ riders and 2 DSM riders. At this point in time, I'm sitting on a couch. I'm like, you got 2 FDJ riders, 2 DSM riders, and Chantal Black in there. You guys just need to drill it and catch Longo Borghini. Instead, they play tactics back there, and the groups come back together. Longo Borghini extends her gap out to about 25, 23 seconds, and behind it's SD Worx that have to get on the front. It's Kopecky and again Chantal Black on the front trying to bring back the solo rider up front. They're not getting any help at all, folks. I mean, they're literally left up there pulling on their own with no one wanting to help the SD Worx team. Remember, this is what happens when you're a big dominant team throughout the season like SD Worx have been, winning so many races. When you come to this moment at Paris-Roubaix and you've been so dominant throughout the season, everybody else back there is like, no way, man. I've taken that beating. I took that whooping a lot of times, and there's no way I'm going to pull with Kopecky and Chantal Black up there just to get beat at the finish here at Paris-Roubaix. At 19 kilometers to go, it's Longo Borghini's time to almost crash. She goes into the right turn, and we see the front wheel drop off the cobblestones, and she all of a sudden corrects her bike, and she's going straight through the right turn and comes out on the left onto the hillside there and pulls it out and gets back up on the pedals. During that same sector 5 of cobblestones, there's a crash back there in the Peloton. That's going to cause more chaos. When we get to the next cobblestone sections with just 4 left to go, it's Lotto Kopecky that throws in a big attack. Trek-Segafredo's Ellen Van Dijk, to my disbelief, is able to follow the Belgian rider. Remember, folks, when you're sitting at home, we saw 15 kilometers of Ellen Van Dijk chasing back on after she had flatted with 70 kilometers to go here at Paris-Roubaix. And if you remember right, in this story, I thought Trek-Segafredo's director, Ina Teutenberg, should have sent Ellen Van Dijk for the world champion back there. Instead, she didn't. Now Ellen Van Dijk still has some form to follow the Belgian rider's attack up there, trying to defend the race leader of Trek-Segafredo, Longo Borghini, who's up the road. With Kopecky's attack, she's got some more company in the form of Marta Cavalli from FDJ. Remember, Cavalli won Amstel Gold recently, just a week ago, so she's on some good form. Now, with Kopecky and Cavalli working together, I'm assuming sitting on the couch, this gap is doable at just over 20 seconds. But they have not just 1, but 2 Trek-Segafredo riders on, because somehow Lucinda Brand found her way up to the 3 riders in front, and now there's 4. Now Kopecky, she's sitting up there with Marta Cavalli taking pulls. It's Kopecky that's sitting third wheel, and then Cavalli says, no, I'm not going to pull up here just by myself, and she gets off the gas, and now the gap up to Longo Borghini starts increasing to over 30 seconds. This, while I'm sitting on the couch, I thought was a mistake from the SD Worx rider Kopecky, because it looked like there was a chance of closing this gap, and then you would have to deal with the dilemma of having 3 Trek-Segafredo riders up there, of course. But Marta Cavalli looked motivated to work along with Kopecky, but Kopecky wanted none of it and instead pulled the plug and went back to the Peloton. The only problem is Kopecky, nobody back there's got any form left, and nobody will work with SD Worx rider. So, of course, we see Chantal Black on the front again, but we already know before the attack of Kopecky that they weren't bringing that group back to Longo Borghini. Now, with 10 kilometers to go, the gap is still out to 30 seconds. The 2 SD Worx rider, guess what? Nobody's helped them. They're still on the front. Kopecky's taking big pulls with Chantal Black, but the time's really not coming down. With 6 kilometers to go, they'll pull the plug, and now it'll be Chantal Black all the way to the finish here at Paris-Roubaix. Up front with 1 kilometer to go on the what's left of the cobblestone sections here at Paris-Roubaix. It is Longo Borghini with a 30-second advantage. She'll enter the velodrome solo, right around the velodrome, still full on the gas all the way to the finish, and win the second edition of Paris-Roubaix for Trek-Segafredo. That had more drama on today's race than any director should ever have to experience at any one race of racing for only 80 kilometers. The drama back there for Ina Teutenberg had to be massive. Now the tactics, I didn't always agree with her, but in the end, they win Paris-Roubaix with Longo Borghini. And in the group behind, when they got onto the cobblestone section, it was Ellen van Dijk doing a big pull all the way to 200 meters to go. Lotto Kopecky will jump off the Trek-Segafredo rider's wheel and will take second place on today's Paris-Roubaix. But third is Trek-Segafredo's Lucinda Brand. So when you dissect today's race, I don't agree with all the tactics done from Trek-Segafredo's director, Ina Teutenberg, but I'm going to give her a pat on the back. She's going to lose some sleep after tonight's race for sure, but I'm going to congratulate her because when you put everything in perspective, it's first and third on the podium, equaling last year's Paris-Roubaix. And when you look at 70 kilometers to go, the amount of drama that was being sent into the car with first the flat from Ellen van Dijk, then of course the crash of Chloe Hoskins, then the attack with 53 kilometers to go from SD Worx Kopecky up there with the Trek-Segafredo rider Lucinda Brand following that attack. That is a flood of information going into the car. Now you see the flat tire of Balsamo, the road world champion. I can forgive for leaving her isolated, especially Ina Teutenberg when you won the race with Longo Borghini, who's flying here, and you get third with Lucinda Brand. I'm sure you're going to lose some sleep after today's race, but a pat on the back here from the Butterfly Effect to everybody at Trek-Segafredo for putting on a great race and a fabulous display. Even if the road world champion did get disqualified today, I'm still smiling here on the Butterfly Effect. Congratulations on a big second edition victory here at Paris-Roubaix. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow for the men's edition of Paris-Roubaix.